The sheriff's voice boomed through the dry Texas air. "Hands where I can see 'em," while Karen shrieked like a banshee, claiming I'd locked her out of her neighborhood. My DEA badge glinted in the late afternoon sun as I stood by the crooked ranch gate she'd just busted through, right into the middle of a federal sting she didn't even know was happening. Yep, that's me, Jake Miller, the guy whose private well this HOA tyrant tapped into to water her precious petunias. I just flushed her system with livestock runoff, and let me tell you, that was only the opening act. You're probably wondering how a retired Fed ended up in a showdown with the queen of petty power trips. Stick around, because this story's wilder than a bull on a bender. Before I continue the story, write a comment below. Where are you watching from? Like if you want to constantly win in any conflicts. So, let's rewind 6 months. I just bought this 25-acre slice of paradise outside Austin, chasing the kind of quiet you can't find in a city crawling with informants and wiretaps. After 17 years busting cartel labs across the Southwest, I was done, ready for cows, coffee, and a sky full of stars. I found this ranch on a dirt road in Travis County, just beyond the grip of the Whispering Pines HOA. Big mistake thinking beyond meant anything to someone like Karen. She rolled up in her golf cart, yellow lights flashing like she was Secret Service, on day 2, clipboard in hand, eyeing my property like it was her next conquest. "Hi, I'm Karen," she chirped, voice dripping with fake sugar. "Just wanted to welcome you." Translation: she hated my red barn, my gravel driveway, even my golden retriever, Buddy, who barked once and got labeled a public nuisance. I kept it civil. "Nice to meet you, Karen. This place isn't in your HOA, though." Her smile tightened, eyes narrowing behind those oversized sunglasses. "We'll see about that," she muttered, scribbling something on her clipboard. That's when I knew this wasn't a neighborly visit. This was war. What I didn't know yet. My ranch wasn't just a retirement project. It sat smack next to a suspected cartel stash house we'd been tracking for months. I was off duty, sure, but old habits die hard, and my team had roped me into some light intel work. Karen had no clue she was about to stick her nose into something way bigger than her rulebook. A week later, I'm brushing my horse, Daisy, when I hear this faint buzz, like a mosquito on steroids. I look up, and there's a drone hovering over my stable. Karen's drone. She'd gone full CIA, spying on my violations. I waved at it, real friendly-like, then strolled inside, grabbed my shotgun, and turned her toy into a cloud of plastic glitter. 20 minutes later, she's at my gate, pounding the intercom. "That was private property," she screeched. "So's my land," I shot back. "Flying over it without permission? That's illegal, Karen." She went redder than a sunburned tourist, yelling, "You've just made an enemy, Jake." I grinned. "Lady, I've faced down kingpins. You're gonna need more than a clipboard." She didn't let up. Next came the letters, anonymous notes stuffed in my mailbox. "Paint your barn beige," one said. "Your dog's barking disrupts the peace," claimed another. My favorite? "We're watching you." I laughed so hard Buddy tilted his head at me. But then I noticed my water pressure dropping every night around 3 a.m. I rigged a monitor to my well, and guess what? A sneaky little pipe ran straight from my system to Karen's backyard. She'd been stealing my water to keep her lawn green while preaching community standards. Oh, I was mad enough to get creative. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I rerouted my gray water tank, used for the cows, right into her line. 2 days later, her roses were wilting. Her grass stank like a porta potty at a music festival, and she was back at my gate, fuming. "Did you sabotage my irrigation?" she demanded. I leaned on the fence, sipping iced tea. Sabotage? No, Karen. I just restored balance. Check your permits next time. She stormed off, vowing revenge, and I couldn't help but smile. This was getting fun. Little did she know, her petty games were about to collide with my day job, and that's where things got really interesting. Karen didn't just slink away after the irrigation incident, she doubled down. A week later, I'm sipping coffee on my porch when a shiny new drone zips over my barn, higher this time, like she'd upgraded to the deluxe stalker package. I'd already installed a signal jammer, old DEA trick, and forced it to land in my pasture. Pulled the footage, and there she was, zooming in on my truck, my shed, even Daisy's hay bales. I left the drone on her doorstep with a note. "Smile next time, Karen." You'd think that'd scare her off, but no, she took it as a challenge. 2 days later, she's at my gate again, this time with a thick manila folder and a smug grin. "You're in violation of setback ordinances," she declared, shoving papers at me. "Your property's unregistered, Jake. We're annexing it." I laughed so hard Buddy barked in confusion. Annexing? Karen, this isn't your jurisdiction. Take it up with the county. Her eyes flashed. Oh, I will. And I've got signatures. She'd been door-knocking, rallying the Whispering Pines crew with tales of my rogue ranch. Half the folks signed just to shut her up. One guy, Tom Jenkins, even apologized later. She caught me during a nap, he mumbled. Didn't mean it. But Karen wasn't playing for laughs. She was serious, dead serious, and that's when I realized this wasn't just annoying anymore. It was dangerous. See, my ranch wasn't just a retirement gig. My old DEA team had tapped me to keep an eye on the place next door, owned by a guy named Rick Carter, a quiet type with a Phoenix rap sheet. We suspected his spread was a drop point for cash and chemicals, part of a laundering ring we'd been chasing for months. I was off the clock, mostly just feeding intel when I could. But Karen's meddling? It risked blowing the whole thing wide open. She didn't know it, of course. She thought I was just some jerk with a loud dog. But her snooping was getting too close to the truth. I tried playing nice first. Invited the HOA board, minus Karen, for a barbecue. Grilled some ribs, cracked open a few Shiner box, and watched two board members, Lisa Hayes and Mike Torres, loosen up. After a couple drinks, they spilled the beans. Karen wanted to force me into the HOA with some ancient zoning loophole. She's obsessed, Lisa admitted, shaking her head. Thinks you're hiding something. I grinned. She's right, just not what she thinks. Then Mike dropped the real kicker. She's been using your well, man. Didn't you know? Nope. I hadn't. But now I did. And that little pipe I'd traced to her yard suddenly made a lot more sense. I kept my cool, but inside, I was boiling. Karen wasn't just a pest, she was a thief, and a bold one. So I upped the ante. I rigged a pressure alarm on my well, and the next time it tripped, 3:17 a.m., I caught her on my security cam, sneaking through the dark with a wrench, trying to reconnect her line. I didn't call the cops. Instead, I flipped a valve and sent a fresh batch of gray water her way. By morning, her backyard was a swamp, and she was on my intercom, voice shaking with rage. You're ruining my property. Funny, I said. I thought stealing water was the real crime here. She hung up, but I knew she'd be back. She always came back. Meanwhile, across the road, Rick Carter's place was heating up. My team picked up chatter, encrypted texts about a drop scheduled for Friday. I've been logging his truck's comings and goings, nothing solid yet, but Karen's chaos was making it harder to stay low-key. Then she did something I didn't see coming. She hired a private eye. This guy, Ed Larson, rolled up in a beat-up Chevy, long lens poking out his window. He parked behind some cedars, thinking he was slick. My team spotted him day one. We waved, took selfies with him in the background. One agent, Sarah Brooks, even set up a lawn chair and ate popcorn while staring him down. We were having a blast, until we realized Ed wasn't just watching me. He was scoping Rick's place too. Karen, in her infinite paranoia, thought we were buddies, maybe running some shady deal together. She had no idea she'd just hired a guy to tail a cartel suspect. A few days later, my handler, Chris Evans, calls me, laughing so hard he can barely talk. Jake, your HOA lady just filed a report with the sheriff. Says your barn's a drug lab, got pics of your feed sacks and everything. I groaned. She's delusional. Yeah, Chris said, but the narcotics unit's gotta check it now. It's protocol. My stomach dropped. This wasn't funny anymore. Karen was about to stumble into a multi-agency op, and I had to figure out how to turn her mess into my advantage. Karen's drug lab report hit my desk like a brick through a window. I'm staring at shaky cell phone pics of my barn, feed sacks labeled suspicious, a compost pile she swore smelled like chemicals, while Chris, my handler, is still chuckling over the phone. She's got no clue, Jake. Thinks she's Columbo. I rubbed my temples. Yeah, well, her delusions just pinged the narcotics unit. We've got a problem. He sobered up fast. They're looping me in tomorrow. I'll stall, but you know the drill, any drug tip gets eyes. Great. Just what I needed. A county crew sniffing around while Rick Carter's stash house hummed next door. But then it hit me, Karen wasn't a problem. She was a gift. A nosy, loud, clueless gift. I hung up and leaned back, watching Buddy chase a butterfly across the yard. If Karen wanted to play detective, I'd let her. Better yet, I'd use her. Rick was slippery, too careful to trip over our wires, but Karen? She'd poke a hornet's nest with a selfie stick and call it civic duty. All I had to do was nudge her toward him and watch her chaos to the rest. Step 1. Keep her focused on me. I mailed her annexation letter back with a sticky note. Check the Federal Land Registry, Karen. You're out of your depth. She didn't reply, but 2 days later, a new drone buzzed my fence line, sleeker, quieter. She'd leveled up again. I jammed it, snagged it, and left it on her porch with another note. Try harder. She did. Next came her PI, Ed Larson, creeping around in that rusty Chevy. My team was on it. Sarah caught him snapping pics of Rick's gate while I grilled steaks for Daisy's vet check. He's sloppy, she said, tossing me a burger. Karen's got him chasing both of you now. I smirked. Good. Let her connect the dots. By Friday, Ed's long lens was glued to Rick's place, and Karen, bless her heart, thought she'd cracked a conspiracy. She sent Ed's photos straight to Rick's burner email, thinking he was a cop. I've got evidence, she wrote. Suspicious activity at Miller's Ranch. Let's talk. My team's text monitor flagged it instantly, a direct link between Karen and a cartel runner. She just stepped into our game without even knowing it. I called Chris. She's in. Hooked Rick with pics of my hay bales. He laughed. What's she want? Dunno yet, but she's emailing a suspect. That's enough for me. He paused. You sure about this, Jake? She's a loose cannon. Exactly, I said. Rick's too smart for us, but not for her. We let it ride. Monday morning, Karen's back at my gate, rocking HOA polo shirt and those ridiculous body cam glasses. She's waving a folder like it's a golden ticket. You're done, Jake. Unapproved lighting, non-native shrubs. I've got you on tape. I leaned on the fence, sipping coffee. Karen, you're trespassing. Again. She scoffed. This is community business. No, I said, it's my land. Sheriff's on speed dial. She tossed the folder at me and stormed off, but not before I saw her scribbles inside, arrows linking my barn to Rick's, labeled collusion hub. It was nonsense, but it was perfect. That night, my team huddled at the ranch. Sarah spread Karen's folder on the table while Chris paced. She's building a case, Sarah said, grinning. Thinks you two are partners. I nodded. Let's give her something to chase. We staged it Tuesday, dropped a crate outside my barn, labeled fertilizer, and fake whispered about shipments loud enough for her drone to catch. She bit hard. By Wednesday, her footage was rolling, and she emailed Rick again. I've got proof of deliveries. We need to meet. He bit too, replied with a time, Friday, 5 p.m. My pulse spiked. Karen was about to barter with a cartel guy, and I had front row seats. Friday morning, she's strutting along the road, walking her yappy poodle in that HOA polo, grinning like she's won the lottery. I watched from my porch, Buddy growling low. Easy, boy, I muttered. She's about to trip over her own leash. At the same time, Rick's truck rolled out, slow, casual, but my gut said he was prepping the drop. Two stories colliding, and Karen was the thread tying them together. Chris called at noon. She set the meet at your place, Jake. Your gate, 5 p.m. I froze. My place. Yeah, he said. She's bold as hell. I laughed, sharp and loud. Bold or dumb? Both, he said. We're wiring it up. You stay clear, till we signal. By 4 p.m., my ranch was a ghost town, agents in place, cameras hot, tension thick as summer humidity. Karen pulled up at 4:55, golf cart parked just outside my gate, and let herself in like she owned it. She didn't see the earpieces, didn't hear the hum of our mics. She thought she was running the show. I watched from the house, heart pounding not from fear, but from the sheer thrill of it. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about Rick, the case, and the sweet, sweet irony of Karen digging her own grave. She was about to hand us everything, and she didn't even know it. Karen strutted through my gate at exactly 5 p.m., her HOA polo crisp and her body cam glasses glinting in the golden Texas light. She clutched a flash drive like it was the key to Fort Knox, oblivious to the fact that my ranch was now a live DEA set, cameras rolling, agents tucked behind the barn, and a fake buyer waiting by my truck. I stayed inside, peeking through the blinds, Buddy whining at my feet. Quiet, boy, I whispered. She's about to star in her own bust. Across the road, Rick Carter's truck idled in his driveway. He'd gotten Karen's last email and was on his way. Two trains about to collide, and I was the guy holding the switch. The buyer, my agent, Matt Rivera, played it cool, leaning against my pickup in a flannel shirt, looking every bit the shady middleman. You got the footage? He asked, voice low but clear over our earpieces. Karen nodded. All business. Everything's here, deliveries, structures, chemicals. I've documented it all. She handed over the flash drive, her voice smug. Jake's breaking rules, endangering us. I want him gone. Matt raised an eyebrow. Gone how? She leaned in, whispering, make it happen. I'll keep quiet if you do. My jaw tightened. She wasn't just tattling. She was trying to cut a deal. Obstruction, coercion, conspiracy. All on tape, gift-wrapped for us. Matt played along, pocketing the drive. What else you got? Karen pulled out a map, hand-drawn, red arrows zigzagging between my barn and Rick's place. He's got partners, she said, voice dropping. Even the sheriff's in on it. Been here twice. Left with nothing. I nearly choked on my coffee. She'd just accused Sheriff Dan Wheeler of corruption, mid-sting, while wearing a camera she thought made her untouchable. Matt nodded, stone-faced. Interesting. We'll talk terms. That's when she dialed 911, right there, in my yard. I'm negotiating with a criminal, she told dispatch, loud enough for us to hear. Send backup. Now. I couldn't believe it. She thought she was running her own op. 10 minutes later, Dan's cruiser rolled up, lights off, moving slow. He'd been briefed, knew this was our show. Karen waved him over like he was her personal assistant, pointing at my barn. That's where he keeps it. Barrels, suspicious stuff. I've got photos. Dan glanced at me through the window, fighting a grin. I stepped out, badge in hand, and her world started crumbling. Ma'am, I said, voice steady. You're trespassing on federal property during an active investigation. She blinked hard. No, this is HOA land. I'm the president. Wrong, I said. You're interfering with a DEA op. Her face froze, gears grinding as Matt and Sarah stepped forward, earpieces visible now. That's not possible, she stammered. I called this in. I'm helping. I crossed my arms. No, Karen. You tried to trade fake intel with a cartel suspect and slandered law enforcement. That's a felony trifecta. Before she could process, Rick's truck pulled up across the road. Perfect timing. He stepped out, saw the scene, and bolted back inside. Too late. Sarah signaled the team, and 2 unmarked SUVs roared past my gate, pinning him in. Karen's eyes darted between us, panic setting in. What's happening? She screeched. Matt slapped cuffs on her wrists. You're under arrest, ma'am. She didn't go quietly. Even as they read her rights, she yelled about community bylaws and resident safety, her glasses still recording her own downfall. The flash drive was bagged, the map tagged, and Dan hauled her to the cruiser while she demanded a lawyer. Across the road, Rick wasn't faring better. Agents swarmed his place, pulling crates from his shed. My phone buzzed. Chris. We've got him. Cash and precursors, just like we thought. Karen's little meet and greet sealed it. I laughed. She's the MVP she never wanted to be. He snorted. Yeah, and she's still yelling in the car. As the cruiser peeled out, Karen's voice echoed through the dust. This is a setup. And I couldn't help but grin. The sun dipped low, painting the ranch in orange hues, and Buddy barked once, tail wagging. I walked to the gate, still ajar from her grand entrance, and noticed something. A folded HOA letter tucked under the post. Notice of violation. Unauthorized personnel on property. She'd filed it on her way in, mid-crime. The nerve of this woman. I had to hand it to her. She never quit. I pocketed it, already plotting my next move. Because Karen might have been cuffed, but the HOA wasn't done with me yet. Karen's cruiser disappeared down the dirt road, her yells fading into the hum of cicadas, but the buzz in my head was just getting started. I stood there, HOA violation letter in hand, staring at the gate she'd stormed through like some suburban warlord. The sun was sinking fast, casting long shadows over the ranch, and Buddy nudged my leg, sensing the storm wasn't over. He was right. Rick Carter's place was a circus now. Agents hauling out crates, radios crackling, headlights slicing through the dusk. My phone lit up with a text from Sarah. Jackpot. Cash, chemicals, the works. Karen's meet gave us the window. I grinned. She'd handed us Rick on a silver platter, but the HOA? They weren't done flexing. 2 days later, I'm feeding Daisy when an email pings in from Whispering Pines HOA. Subject, Interim Compliance Review. Karen was temporarily out as president. Big surprise, but the board had her files and was picking up where she left off. Attached was a PDF, photos of my barn, my solar panels, even my truck's tire tracks, all flagged as non-compliant. They wanted a vote to annex my land into their little empire. I leaned back in my chair, coffee going cold, and laughed. These people had no idea who they were messing with. I fired back a reply, a photo of my DEA badge and 3 words, "Try me, folks." But behind the bravado, I was done playing defense. It was time to end this. I started with Karen's folder, the one she'd thrown at me like a tantrum grenade. Hours later, I'm knee-deep in her scribbles, and there it is, gold. Receipts for Ed Larson's PI gig, paid from the HOA's legal fund, $3, $200, triple the going rate, no board approval. Then the drone invoices, $1, $500, logged as aerial survey, also HOA cash, also unlisted. She'd been skimming their budget to fund her vendetta, and they didn't even know. I scanned it all, stuffed it in an envelope, and mailed copies to every house in Whispering Pines. No return address, just a note. Ask your board where your dues went. Step 1. Chaos. Step 2 was legal. I hit the Travis County Records Office and pulled the HOA charter. Buried in the fine print was a dissolution clause. 65% of homeowners could vote to kill it. Karen's reign had kept that buried, her fines and threats locking folks in line. But now? Her mugshot was all over the local news. HOA Prez busted in federal sting, and the neighborhood Facebook group was a wildfire. She fined me $50 for my kid's bike. One post raged. Told me my mailbox was too blue. Another griped. The fear was cracking, and I was ready to break it wide open. I threw another barbecue open invite this time. Saturday night, my yard's packed. Lisa and Mike from the board, Tom Jenkins, even old Mrs. Betty Carter, no relation to Rick, who'd once ratted me out for buddies barking. I grilled brisket, poured Lone Star beers, and let the truth spill. Karen didn't just mess with me, I said, voice carrying over the crowd. She stole your money, tapped my well, and nearly tanked a federal case. Gasps rippled through. Tom raised his bottle. I voted for her, man. Feel like an idiot. Betty patted his arm. We all did, hon. By the end, they weren't just mad. They were ready. Can we ditch the HOA? Lisa asked. I slid the charter across the table. 65% says yes. Monday morning, the petition started. Tom knocked on doors, Betty baked cookies for the cause, and Lisa drafted a ballot. Karen's arrest had lit the fuse. My barbecue poured the gas. By Friday, 72% voted to dissolve, over the line, and then some. The board emailed me, frantic. Is this valid? I forwarded it to the county clerk, who shot back. Confirmed. Done. Whispering Pines HOA was toast. I stood on my porch that night, watching the stars, Buddy at my side. No more drones, no more letters. Just peace, real peace. But Karen wasn't gone for good. Her trial rolled around 3 months later, and I had to testify. Sitting in that courtroom, watching her squirm as her lawyer spun a good citizen defense, was surreal. Chris played the tape, her offering Matt that flash drive, demanding I disappear. The jury didn't buy it. She got 2 years probation, a $5,000 fine, and a record that tanked her life. Last I heard, she sold her house and moved to some HOA-free town in Oklahoma. I still laugh about that. The dust settled over Whispering Pines like a sigh of relief, and my ranch finally felt like mine. No more golf carts buzzing my fence, no more drones humming overhead, just the soft lowing of cows and the rustle of cedar trees in the breeze. It's been 6 months since Karen's cruiser peeled out and the HOA folded, and I'm standing on my porch, coffee steaming in the crisp morning air, Buddy sprawled at my feet. You'd think that'd be the end of it, right? A clean win, a quiet life. But stories like this don't wrap up without a little extra spice, and Karen left me one last surprise that turned this whole mess into something bigger than I ever planned. So, grab a seat, because I've got one more twist to share, and I need you to weigh in at the end. After the HOA dissolved, the neighborhood transformed overnight. Kids rode bikes down the road without fear of a $25 clutter fine. Tom Jenkins put up a basketball hoop, crooked, but nobody cared. Mrs. Betty started a book club, and Lisa Hayes even waved at me when she jogged by. It was like someone flipped a switch. People stopped hiding behind their blinds and started living. One afternoon, I'm fixing a gate hinge when Tom rolls up in his pickup. Jake, he says, grinning, we're thinking community garden. You in? I raised an eyebrow. Where? He pointed to a scrubby corner of my land. Right there, if you'll let us. I shrugged. Soil's good. Go for it. Next week, they're out there with shovels and seedlings, tomatoes, peppers, even a watermelon patch. Never thought I'd see the day. But the real kicker came a month later. I'm checking my mail, actual mail, not HOA threats, when I spot a letter tucked under the box. No stamp, just my name in shaky cursive on HOA stationery. My stomach tightened. Karen? Couldn't be, she was long gone. I slid it open, and there's a note from Betty. Jake, thank you for giving us our neighborhood back. I was too scared to say it before. She fined me $10 once for chalk drawings my grandkids made. You're a good man. I stood there, rereading it, a lump in my throat I didn't expect. That letter's framed on my mantle now, next to a photo of Buddy and Daisy. It's not just paper, it's proof this fight mattered. Meanwhile, Karen's fallout kept rippling. Her trial hit the local papers hard. HOA tyrant caught in DEA sting, and folks couldn't stop talking. I'd catch snippets at the feed store. She made me repaint my shed twice, or told me my wind chimes were a noise violation. The anger was real, but so was the relief. Chris called me after her sentencing, still chuckling. Probation's killing her, Jake. She's banned from any HOA gig, moved to some nowhere town in Oklahoma. No rules to boss around there. I smirked. Per Oklahoma. He laughed. Yeah, well, you're the hero now. Rick's crew's done, 6 arrests, $2 million in cash seized. All because she couldn't leave you alone. That's when it hit me. Karen didn't just lose, she handed me a legacy. Rick's bus closed a case I'd chased for years, and Whispering Pines became a cautionary tale. I started getting calls, neighbors from other HOAs, asking how I did it. She's fighting us for grass height, one guy groaned. Can you help? I'd laugh, sip my coffee, and say, get me their charter. We'll figure it out. Turned into a side gig, nothing official, just me, a beer, and a knack for sniffing out loopholes. Last month, I helped a crew in Bastrop ditch their board. Sent them a bill, 1 6-pack of Shiner Bock. They paid up with a thank you note. But Karen's final gift? That HOA letter she'd slipped under my gate during the sting. I kept it, mostly for laughs, until I showed it to Sarah over beers one night. Unauthorized personnel, she read, snorting. She wrote this while committing a felony. I nodded. Her last stand. Sarah's eyes lit up. Jake, this is a story. Like, a big one. She's a true crime buff, listens to podcasts nonstop, and she dragged me into recording it. We sat in my barn, mic's hot, and I spilled the whole saga, the drone, the well, the sting. Took 3 hours, 2 takes, and a lot of laughing. Last week, she dropped it online, the HOA Queen versus the DEA, and it's blowing up. Downloads hit 50,000 already. People love it. The comments are wild. Karen's a legend. Jake, you're my hero. Even got an email from some producer in LA sniffing around for a TV pitch. So here I am, ranch quiet, stars bright, and a podcast I never meant to make turning me into some accidental folk hero. I bolted a new sign to my gate last week. Trespassers will be met with coffee and sarcasm. Folks laugh when they see it, and that's fine. I earned that laugh. Karen thought she'd control me, but she built me a life instead. Peace, a garden, a neighborhood that breathes free. I lock the gate every night now, not out of fear, but because it's mine to lock. And when I look out at that horizon, I know one thing for sure. No one's flying drones over my land again. So, what do you think? Was Karen a villain, or just a woman who pushed too far? Drop a comment. I'm dying to hear your take. And if you love this ride, hit subscribe. We've got more stories where this came from. See you out there.